So the presence of anger is not the problem, but the presence of uncontrollable anger is the problem. Hey, this is Sean Smith, and in this video, we're gonna talk about how to let go of anger from your mind, from your body, and from your spirit. At least the anger that's let goable. And not all anger is let goable. So in order to get a handle on this, you have to understand the totality of anger. There's actually some positive elements of anger and certain things that we crave neurologically. It's not just this bad thing that we should always try to avoid, and nobody who's evolved ever gets angry. That's not it at all. Now, if you're a business owner, this is really critical because building a business is already hard enough, but it's even harder if you're dealing with suppressed or repressed or unmanageable anger. Listen to this whole conversation. I promise there will be something profound in it for yourself, your business, or your clients. I fall into the trap, and I think a lot of us fall into the trap of just wanting to be immediate with our bodies, wanting to be immediate with the results, right? I want to follow a diet and drop all weight yesterday, right? I want to go to the gym and immediately have all my muscles, explode and have my body look the way I want it to look immediate. I think we have this issue with immediacy in just about everything. I think we have a microwave mentality all the time. But when we think about what's going to come 10 years from now, I'm going to give you a different way to think about it, actually. What if, let's just use your body as an example, because a lot of us, probably most of us, have issues with our body. There's something that we wish was different. We wish we were lighter. We wish we were heavier. We wish we were bigger. We wish we were smaller. And a lot of us really struggle. We go up and down. We go up and down. And I think one of the problems is because we actually don't value the future. The unconscious mind has an incredibly difficult time valuing the future. So when we try to motivate ourselves into the future, it's not all that easy because the unconscious mind really just understands our current experiences. So we have to speak to the unconscious mind in language that it understands. So holding a vision for the future is important. I'm not saying don't play with the future. It's absolutely important. And let's fuel ourselves with something that the mind really understands. Here's a question that the mind will absolutely understand. So with your body or any other goal, this really works. Instead of only saying, where do I want to be 6 months from now, 1 year from now, 5 years from now, 20 years from now? Instead of saying, what do I want back there? I want you to ask this question. Whatever it is that you're wanting, I'm going to continue using the body as the example. What if, not how will my body feel a year from now, but what if I would have started this a year ago? How would I feel right now if I would have started this a year ago? I'd love for you to take that on right now, especially if body is one of the things that you're really wanting to dissect. And we'll get into the anger conversation here in a moment because it all relates to the body. So how would I feel if I would have made the commitment a year ago? And if it's irritating, that's great. That's great. So I'll answer the question. If I would have made this commitment a year ago, I would feel younger, I would feel vibrant, and I would feel fueled. I would feel like I'm on fire. So I want to hear from you. If I would have made this commitment a year ago, and if your body is not something that you want to commit to, if it's just not one of your areas, that's fine. Then whatever area it is for you, if I would have made the commitment to my finances a year ago, if I would have made the commitment to my relationship a year ago. The reason this is so powerful is because our brain already works in the what if conversation, doesn't it? Our brain already goes, oh, look at the past. And I wish I would have done something different in the past. So it's better most of the time to use the way the brain is already working, but just use it in a different way, rather than trying to force the brain to operate in a different pattern. Now, the brain does have the ability to operate in the different patterns that we want it to, but most of us don't have that already built in. Most of us have been looking at our past, wishing it were different for years and years and years, probably decades for most of us. So you can go ahead and use that pattern. Listen, if this is the way the current is already going, then let's just go ahead and use that current, but use it in a way that's actually going to empower us. Now, the idea is not to make you feel bad about yourself. The idea is to actually give your body the experience of what would have happened if you would have made the commitment back then. And that experience is what the body goes, oh, and the unconscious mind goes, oh, that feels good. I get it. And then it'll be easier to find leverage and inspiration to do it going forward, because you've given your body more of, and your unconscious mind, more of a real experience now. And many of you have probably heard the unconscious mind can't actually tell the difference between a vividly imagined event and reality. So what we're doing is essentially we're reaching out into the future kind of and saying, this is how I want to feel. Help me stay committed because this is how I want to feel. But if you just try to do it in theory, it's very difficult. So let's take this conversation into the topic, which is anger. So especially for those of us that have a mission to share, you have a story to share, you have training, you want to be a teacher, you want to be a coach, it's already hard, right? It's not easy. Fighting against our body makes it much more difficult. So we want our bodies to be a vessel to hold our purpose, right? We want our bodies to be working with us, not working against us. We're already going to have mental challenges. Let's not also have physical challenges that stack on top of the mental challenges and have our body sucking up more energy just to stay afloat, because that's the energy that we can use to propel ourselves forward and continue to motivate and inspire ourselves toward our purpose. You know, the anger that we have toward ourselves doesn't support us. It keeps us shackled, really. It's so heavy. So I want to share with you how you can actually release the anger from your mind, from your body, from your spirit, because we always talk about this mind, body, spirit connection, right? And anger is so detrimental to our physical body. So if you want your body to give you the capacity and give you the fuel, one of the ways you can drop some of the emotional weight, and a lot of times with it, some actual physical weight, is to remove anger. Release the stored up anger in your body. Because anger is it's like a mouse trap. You know, one of the old time mouse traps. I know they're like digital now and stuff like that, but the old time mouse traps, I'm sure they still have them now, where you've got the wire, and it's got a hook, and the hook is attached to this spring-loaded coil, and all that has to happen is a mouse comes and hits the cheese, and then the wire just goes whoosh, and it just explodes with enough force to either kill immediately or trap the mouse. And our anger works like that, right? So many of us are walking around and our anger is like that wire, and the only thing that has to happen is somebody just trip this cord, somebody remove this little hook, and all of a sudden, whoosh, all the anger explodes. See, anger is not an evil thing to experience. It's not necessarily a bad thing to experience. It's actually common. And I could say it's healthy. There's a lot of goodness in anger. There's empowerment in anger. There's adrenaline in anger. And you know what there is in anger? There's ownership and there's control in anger. So anger itself is not a bad emotion. But when we can't control it, then the effect of it is bad. And people around us oftentimes get the effect of our stored anger. So the presence of anger is not the problem, but the presence of uncontrollable anger is the problem. And if you don't give your anger to everybody else, then you're going to give it to yourself. But the effect of that stored, uncontrollable, misunderstood anger is either going to hurt outward or it's going to hurt inward. So I don't want you to think that the goal is to never be angry again. I want you to just be able to control your anger. And anger, like so many emotions, has a very short shelf life. But for most of us, when we touch our anger, it lasts for a long time. The reason is the anger that's relevant in the moment happens, But then the anger that we've been carrying around all this time is what lasts so long. I mean, I just got this image of like this gigantic flood coming down the mountain, right? All of that pent up anger, as soon as the dam breaks, all of that anger comes down. It literally like sweeps us away and takes us off of our feet. That's how so many people experience their anger, but it's the past anger that's actually the problem. So I want to help you get to the point where your anger can move through you and you can actually use it as a positive charge. Anger has leverage inside of it as well. Sometimes we can just get angry at a situation, or even angry that we've allowed something to last a while, but not angry at ourselves to the point where it creates a lot of shame and guilt that prevents us from moving forward. So it's all about our management and control of anger, not the existence of anger. And a lot of people that want to get rid of their anger, you got to understand, for you to get rid of your anger probably means that you've gotten rid of your ambition, right? As long as you have places to go, it's natural to get a little irritated about certain things in your life. So I don't want you to get to the point where you think the goal is to mute your emotional being so much so that you don't experience anger. I want you to feel alive, and anger is part of that. But we just gotta own it. So the leverage here is your body ready to take you to the places that you want to go? In your finances, in your relationships, with your mission, just in life in general. So let's start controlling this. Mind, body, spirit. I'm going to go in that order because I think this is the order that it happens. The way to release anger in your mind, and it's not actually anger in the mind, but your mind is creating the thoughts that lead to the anger where it's actually stored. So I just don't want you to think that the anger is literally in the body. It doesn't really matter that you kind of like exactly understand the science behind it. But I love to teach, so I always kind of try to split the hairs. So the anger is not literally in the mind, but the mind creates the anger. And the way the mind creates the anger is with thoughts. Whatever thoughts you're telling yourself is going to determine whether the anger gets triggered or not. So some of the more common thoughts that I've noticed in my life, and people that we've talked about this too, some of the more common thoughts that generate anger are thoughts like, it's not fair. If you think life's not fair and you notice things that make you confirm that life's not fair, you might get angry. Or anything that has to do with respect, right? People get enraged on the road when people cut them off. At the core of that, there's an unconscious story most of the time that's all about not being respected. Because if you're not respected, then that means you're not valid, you're not valuable, you're not meaningful maybe. So that story about not being respected is one of the things that makes people angry. One of my anger triggers is when I got to clean up somebody else's mess. Because you did this, I am being affected, right? You are the one that did this, but I got to clean it up. That's usually one of the stories in my mind that irritates me. So it's really helpful to have a little bit of a lot of self-awareness to recognize the stories in your mind that generate the anger. Because if we can control the stories, then we won't trigger the anger. Or at least we won't trigger it in a way that it explodes on us. And you also have to understand that underneath anger, there's fear and pain. The only reason that I would get irritated for having to clean up somebody else's mess is because once upon a time, that really hurt me. And I lost things because of it. I lost opportunities, or I lost time with family, or I lost something, and I don't want that to happen again. So I have a fear that's protecting a pain, and then the anger is essentially the bouncer at the door, right? My body has said, I don't like this pain, so I'm afraid of it happening again. Hey, anger, you make sure this never happens again. I've never put those three together, at least in that analogy, so hopefully that's landing for you. So anger is actually, again, as I mentioned in one of the other videos, a protective mechanism based on love. Protection is always based on love. So anger is the thing that we use with force to try to make sure that the pain that we have back there doesn't get triggered. So if I can be angry and keep you away, then you're not going to be able to go into the door or threaten the pain. So that's how these things stack on top of each other. So in order to start releasing it from the body, this is the second level now, you got to explore those things. What is the fear that you have? If you get enraged on the road, what's the fear? Are you afraid of getting into an accident? Are you afraid of maybe even yourself, like what you might do to yourself, so it's easier to project the anger onto somebody else? What are you actually afraid of, and what pain is that fear trying to protect? So whenever we do this emotional work, it's always going to be some version of looking at self, right? Some version of self-reflection. When you identify the fear and the pain, now it's time to let it go from the body. And the only way to let anything go from the body is to express it. What most of us have done most of our lives, because of the way we've been taught, is we've suppressed our pain. We're holding it down like the beach ball underwater because we don't want it to come up. We don't want to feel like we're a loser. We don't want to feel like we're weak. We don't want other people to see us, like, because they might think that we're not leaders anymore. They might lose respect for us. The suppression of our emotions is the problem. The emotions are not the problem. The suppression of our emotions is the problem. I've heard it said that emotion is energy in motion. Our emotions do not want to be stuck in our bodies. They want to leave. And that's why I said earlier, emotions have a very short shelf life. If we experience our emotions, they will go through our bodies, we will feel it, and then they will leave. It's actually very, very difficult to embrace and feel an emotion and have it stay in your body for any extended period of time. My experience is the only emotion that kind of breaks that rule is grief. Because grief is like its own category and it's based on all kinds of other stuff. But pretty much all other emotions, if we truly feel them, they will just move through our body and at some point they'll leave. It could be a few seconds, it could be a few minutes. But if we just become this conduit, if we allow our body to become this clean channel for emotions, emotions will enter and emotions will leave. But it's our brain, it's our mind, it's our ego, it's the self-preservation of us being tough and us being a leader or us being a man or us being a woman or us being whatever it is that we're trying to preserve. It's that preservation that says, oh, nobody can see that I'm going through this right now. I can't allow myself to see that I'm going through this right now. It's all a function of trying to protect ourselves from the judgments that we're afraid of. So we suppress the emotions. That's the human problem. The suppression of emotions. And we're the only ones that suppress emotions. Animals in the animal kingdom don't suppress emotions. It just flows through. So we need to become a clear channel. The way to do that is when you identify what you're afraid of and what the pain is, you got to express it. It has to come out of your body. People are afraid of expressing because they don't think that they'll ever actually fully express it. But nobody has ever cried and not stopped crying. Nobody has ever experienced an emotion and have it just stay with them forever. Our brain says, hey, don't touch that thing, because if you ever touch it, we'll never be able to let it go. We think that all of our emotions are quicksand. And as soon as we touch it, we're just going to get lost in it. That's not true. That's because we misunderstand what emotions actually are, because we're programmed by society to not understand emotions. Emotions are one of the most sacred gifts of being a human, and yet most of us have been programmed that emotions are bad or certain emotions are bad. So the way to become a clear channel is embrace the existence of emotions and then feel them. Feel them. That takes a little bit of bravery sometimes, but your purpose is worth it. If you have children, your kids are watching. If you have work that you need to do, the emotions that you're holding on to in your body is not helping you do that work. So even if it's uncomfortable, it's worth it. But I'll tell you, I've never seen it be anywhere near as painful or uncomfortable or taking as much time as most people think it will. The most common thing we hear when we do this work as coaches with people to help them release emotions, if they have anything negative to say, it's always some version of, why didn't I do this 5 years ago? I should have done this 10 years ago. Like, what would I have been able to feel over the last 10, 5 year, or whatever that time frame is? That's the only negativity that we typically hear. We don't ever hear anybody go, oh, that was not worth it. Here, let me grab all of that and stuff it back into my body. I've never heard that. It's all a projection of what we think it's going to feel like, but it never feels like that. It's our fear getting out of control. So you've got to release the emotion. I'm going to give you a few ways to release the emotion. One of them is just yell, especially with anger. Yell. There's nothing wrong with getting pissed off. If it's in your body, it's in your body. Pretending that it's not has never released anything from the body. If you have anger, you have anger. It doesn't matter that you judge yourself or you tell yourself you shouldn't have the anger. Pretending it's not there will never release it. If it's there, it's there. If you have anger toward a certain person, let it go. Actually, that's the only way to let it go, is to let it out. So if it's there, it's there. Anger usually has an angry voice. Anger usually has a yell or scream attached to it. Scream it out. Do it in a way that's safe for yourself, safe for other people. Do it like by yourself in a room or something, but get it out. Anger has an energy, and that energy is usually pretty high, and it needs to come out of you. It'll never come out through suppression. It'll only come out through expression. Physically move. When we physically move our body, we're actually putting our body in motion. And when our body is in motion, then all the things that are in our body are in motion. And it's easier for our emotions to move when our body moves. It's really difficult to keep our body stiff and then expect our emotions inside to move. So just the movement of your body, especially through exercise, actually gets some of the emotions moving a little bit, and then it's easier to express them because your body is already in expressive mode. The other way is to write it out. Get it out of your mind and get it onto paper. I would suggest actual physical pen and paper rather than keyboard. But keyboard's better than nothing. Pen and paper is better than keyboard. Getting it out of your body is the way to express it. So mind, body, spirit. There is no energy of anger in our spirit. So releasing anger from your spirit is not even possible because there's nothing in there to release. But really what we're doing is we're releasing our spirit from the anger. Because our spirit is trapped underneath all of that anger. So releasing your spirit is a byproduct of releasing the anger from your mind and from your body. And what so many people are doing is they're trying to dive into their spirit. They're trying to let their spirit soar. They're trying to let their purpose come out, but it can't. Because it's trapped inside of a gigantic, like cement ceiling of the anger. And so it might feel like you're on a rescue mission. It might feel like you hear your spirit way down underneath there, just like muted whispers, and you got to go after it. And the way you go after it is you free it by busting up all of that energy that's keeping it down now. Mind, body, spirit. And when you can live like that, you're free. And these emotions, not just anger, but all emotions are free to move through you rather than to trap you. This is the way to take back control of your emotions rather than continually be controlled by your emotions. One of those two things is happening. Either you're controlled by your emotions or you are controlling your emotions, and your emotions are critical fuel for your purpose. Now, if you like this video, check out that video on 11 deep dive transformational coaching techniques that you can use to transform your clients today. The reason you need to have a framework is because there's got to be bumper rails. There's got to be a guideline for you as the coach, but also for the client.